As far as I know, the Stempians weren't rich, at least not in the way we think of rich here in 21st century Los Angeles. But they were well off, at least for 1980s northeastern Pennsylvania. They had a pool, which they opened to kids around the neighborhood. They had a satellite TV, with which they hosted pro wrestling watch parties for the entire block. But most importantly, they were the first, and for many years, the only family on our block to own a snowblower. Every time it snowed, you could look out your window, and there was Stan Stempian Sr. cleaning the snow off your sidewalk. He never left the block, and he didn't do driveways. But you could rest assured that no matter how much snow there was, Stan would make sure you could get out of your door in the morning. One day I asked Mr. Stempian why he cleared all the sidewalks, and he replied with a wry smile, "That's just what neighbors do." For generations, neighborhoods served as the fundamental building blocks of American culture. Whether you lived in the city or the suburbs or the country, you knew your neighbors. In fact, many people my age grew up humming the cheerful refrain from Sesame Street. Who are the people in your neighborhood? The people that you meet each day. But long before Mr. Stempian ever fired up his snowblower, or before Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch graced our television screens, our ancestors extolled the role of the good neighbor in the book of Proverbs. For those unfamiliar, Proverbs is a laundry list of practical wisdom, stuff your grandparents probably taught you already, added to the Bible sometime around the 5th century BCE. Here's what it has to say about neighbors. Tov shachen karov me'ach rachok. Better a close neighbor than a distant brother. Now, we'll always be connected and obligated to our families and, of course, to the Jewish people in Israel. But this adage encourages us to recognize that those physically closest to us constitute a crucial opportunity for connectedness and meeting. The medieval sage Ibn Ezra explains, better a neighbor who is near and close at hand to help you, and you them, than a brother far away. Therefore, never forsake your neighbor. The Hebrew language itself underscores the importance of cultivating close relationships with our neighbors. The word for neighbor in Hebrew, shachen, shares its root with the Hebrew word for divine presence, Shekhinah. According to the early rabbis, we invite the Shekhinah into our midst when we gather together with others for sacred acts, such as Torah study, prayer, or a Beit Din, a religious court. The 20th century Jewish theologian Martin Buber teaches that the Shekhinah enters the world whenever we encounter another human being, not as an object of our needs or goals, but rather as a unique and honored presence. Buber calls this the I-thou relationship. When two people truly recognize each other face to face without motive or judgment, that sacred openness becomes a vessel for God's presence on earth. Our neighborhoods and communities then provide a perpetual setting for sacred encounters. When we make ourselves present for others, we create sacred spaces, much like those I enjoyed growing up in northeastern PA. Now, don't get me wrong, our neighborhood wasn't some sort of utopia. We had a nosy neighbor. We had neighbors with a dangerous dog, and goodness knows every time a fence went up or came down, there was a neighborly disagreement about the property line, but we paid attention to one another. We were generous with one another, and we stuck together in bad times and in good. Today, when I think about my neighborhood, when I talk to people about theirs, it feels like our sense of togetherness has diminished. As commuting times have increased, we spend more of our day in transit or alone in cars, reducing those casual interactions with our neighbors and community members. Add in the rise of tightly scheduled extracurricular activities for children, as well as the fact that our work all too often follows us home, either in the form of unfinished reading, writing, emails, or texts. And there's little, yeah, that's right. And there's little, if any, time to even acknowledge our neighbor, let alone forge meaningful bonds with them. The internet also plays a role in our estrangement. A 2018 study conducted by researchers at Cornell reveals that access to broadband causes a significant decline in real interactions and civic engagement. And with high-speed internet now available wherever we go, we can use cyberspace as an escape from genuine human interaction. And that is precisely what we do. We check our emails and our texts on the way from our cars to our front doors. We listen to podcasts or talk on the phone as we walk our dogs. Most of us probably say hello, even check in to see how our neighbors are doing, but the moment an interaction feels too long, too mundane, or too uncomfortable, our phones are right there, beckoning us to break contact and check in on our work, or our kids, or our parents, or our spouses, or our schools, or the news, or anything, really. And as our attention has steadily drifted away from our neighbors to more pressing concerns, our neighborhoods have increasingly devolved into banal collections of houses instead of sacred communities of people. We have, in the words of Ibn Ezra, forsaken our neighbor. And this has had profound consequences, not just for us as individuals, but for American society as a whole. It has diminished our safety and security by depriving us of our most immediate, most reliable network of concern. It has diminished our sense of belonging by depriving us of our closest points of connectedness. And it has diminished our agency by denying us the most accessible venue to enact meaningful change. But the antidote to these social perils lies close at hand. In fact, it's sitting right outside our front doors, or right next to us in our pews. When we invest in our neighborhoods and communities, when we weave them together with attentiveness, generosity, and mutual commitment, we invite the Shekhinah back into our everyday lives and reclaim the safety, belonging, and impact we can only achieve together. These aren't abstract ideals. They take shape in small, ordinary acts, in noticing, in sharing, and in showing up. And when practiced consistently, they anchor our communities and neighborhoods against the forces of isolation, loneliness, and despair by reminding us that holiness rests in our everyday interactions. Attentiveness is the first and primary pillar of the close-knit community. As celebrated author and activist Jane Jacobs wrote decades ago in her landmark work, The Death and Life of Great American Cities, the safety and vitality of our neighborhoods rely upon the eyes and ears of the street. As far too many of us now know, safety cannot be procured slowly through gates or ring cameras or even regular LAPD patrols. Rather, safety is fashioned by people who walk around, who talk to one another, who know one another, who pay attention to one another. This is precisely why police departments across the country encourage neighborhoods to organize block patrols or neighborhood watches. Because neighbors who pay attention know when something is out of place. Neighbors who pay attention know when someone needs help. The very same is true right here. When we pay attention to those around us, when we get out of our cars instead of dropping off, when we hang out after the service, we notice when something is wrong. We notice when someone needs us to soothe their pain or to lift up their joys. No one ever asked Mr. Stempian to clear the snow from our sidewalks. He just paid attention. And he saw elderly neighbors and young children struggling to shovel their walks in the snow. And then he responded, embodying the second pillar of close-knit neighborhoods, generosity. Now, I don't know how much earlier Mr. Stempian woke up on snow days to clear the walks. 30 minutes, maybe 45, maybe an hour. But that's a significant investment in the neighborhood. Every time it snowed, that man woke up early to clean everyone else's sidewalk for no other reason than the fact that he could do it easier and better. That's generous. Nor was that the limit of his generosity. Every kid in our neighborhood knew how to get to the Stempians because their home was always open. What they had, they shared. From their food, to their toys, to their pool. And our neighborhood became a community because of it. When streets, parks, and communal institutions are replaced by anonymous digital interactions and transactional consumer experiences, we lose those spaces. We lose the places where we can belong. Now, many of us here don't feel that absence because we have this place. We have each other. But not everyone feels that way when they come up this hill. And even fewer still have a place like this. And if we don't have a community and we don't have a neighborhood, well, then we can begin to feel very much alone. In 2023, the United States Surgeon General issued an advisory declaring loneliness a public health epidemic, one with quantifiable effects on cardiac, neurological, and mental health. In response, he recommended a series of interventions, including, and you'll never believe this, creating intentional spaces for conversations outside the workplace and home. Generous communities create these spaces instinctively, bringing one another together over a shared meal, a shared task, or a shared concern. When we give of ourselves, especially out of attentiveness, we foster trust and cooperation, leading to more connected, more resilient communities in which everyone is known and valued. But even in a neighborhood alive with attentiveness and generosity, the nonstop demands of work and family life, layered atop the endless stream of alarming news and the slog of civic and corporate bureaucracy, can sometimes make real change seem impossible. Shortly after my family and I moved into our Sherman Oaks home a few years ago, branches began to fall from the city tree outside our home. Big branches, dangerous branches, One smashed through my windshield. Another destroyed my city-provided trash can. And after more than a year of phone calls and report after report after report, well, you can guess, nothing happened. And exhausted, I resigned in defeat, only to wake up in those moments when my wife reminded me that it was still an issue. But then, the branch on our neighbor's tree fell dangerously close to their newborn. Before I even noticed what happened, she was already in motion, knocking on doors and rallying the entire block to submit reports about their overgrown trees, calling the district supervisor. And wouldn't you know it, a few months later, the Department of Forestry arrived to trim all the trees on the block. What felt impossible to me as an individual citizen became manageable as a community fueled by the third pillar of close-knit neighborhoods: mutual commitment. By pledging ourselves to one another's safety, by showing up for the people living right beside us, our neighborhood reclaimed a piece of control over our crazy world. And it didn't stop there either. During last winter's Santa Monica Mountains wildfires, our block started a simple text chain to share updates on evacuations, power outages, and water shortages. Quickly, we fashioned a network of mutual responsibilities: grocery runs, evening patrols, check-ins for the elderly. And I think most of the city felt the same, united by our attentiveness to the trauma and loss suffered by so many, united by our generosity and eagerness to help, united by a mutual commitment that ennobled and empowered us to make a tangible difference however we could, whether it meant greasing the wheels of our local and state governments to show up and help, or preparing meals for those in need, or sharing homes and rooms with evacuees, or donating countless hours, dollars, and items to help displaced families begin to rebuild their homes and their lives. Look, I know it sounds a bit hokey, but we're not talking about recreating Leave It to Beaver or some idyllic suburbia. We're talking about looking up from our cell phones when we get out of our cars. I'm talking about bringing cookies to the house or the apartment next door, going for a walk around the block without our headphones, or simply learning the story of our neighbors. We're talking about investing in the people whose fate we ultimately share. And our tradition wants us to get this. It's why the very first thing we do after Yom Kippur is head outside to build our Sukkot. Eating and living outdoors reminds us that, like it or not, we're connected to our neighbors and community members. We breathe the same air. We fight the same traffic. We hear the same sirens. And we face the same problems. But when we know each other well enough to recognize distress, when care becomes not a stranger's burden, but a neighbor's reflex, when collaboration replaces individualism, then we can create spaces of genuine meeting that lift individuals beyond loneliness and despair and into relationship, inviting God's compassionate presence, the Shekhinah, into our midst. In place of isolation, we'll discover safety. In place of loneliness, the belonging of generously shared life. In place of despondency, the assuredness of community and teamwork. And that's not nostalgia. That's the very urgent work of building the foundations of an enduring community that our tradition wants us to take on. Let this be the year we come close in presence to one another and to our neighbors. Then shall we become brothers and sisters in our own right, joined in safety, in community, and in strength. Gemar Chatima Tova. May we seal this blessing in the book of life for ourselves, for this community, and for all the people in our neighborhood, the people that we meet each day.